As with so many fandoms, furry is a fickle one. Despite our shared love of funny animals, specific tastes range far and wide, and that can make it difficult to reach a consensus on even the most popular works. But occasionally there's a piece of media so well crafted that it wins over all but the staunchest contrarians, and as a result becomes irrevocably integrated into the DNA of furry culture. In 2016, that's what happened with Zootopia, and how could it not? Disney knew exactly what they were doing. Or did they? This is The Mouthful. My name is Bruto, and there's a question that needs an answer. It's been 5 years since Zootopia, also known as Zootropolis, was bestowed upon us, and yet this question continues to haunt me. And the answer might seem obvious: residents earn money, which is exchanged for goods and services, just as it is here. That's certainly accurate, but a little overly simplistic because it ignores a factor that doesn't exist in our human world. At least, not to the same extreme, and that is size difference. The creators of Zootopia decided that rather than try to normalize the sizes of various species and make them all similar to one another, they'd instead stay reasonably true to real life. As a result, residents of the city could be 3 inches tall or 3 meters or anywhere in between. And not that my opinion matters one way or the other, but I think they made the right choice, as it makes the city feel more robust and dynamic. But while we are clearly shown how this influences their infrastructure, no mention is made of how it's dealt with economically. Which, while it doesn't detract from my ability to enjoy the movie, does leave the door open for speculation, and who am I to resist that invitation? So allow me to paint you a word picture. A rabbit and an elephant are the 2 newest recruits to join the Zootopia Police Department. They've both just graduated from the academy with similarly high marks and are entering the workforce for the first time. Given that their qualifications, roles, and responsibilities are all identical, how are they compensated? Well, as far as I can see, there are 2 options. The obvious conclusion, based on our own life experience, is that they would have identical salaries. After all, humans have been fighting for equal pay since basically the beginning of time, so it only makes sense to project that ideal onto our fantasy animal society. But this fails to take into account cost of living. Let's just focus on food specifically for a moment. The daily recommended caloric intake for a human adult is somewhere around 2,000 calories. And while the costs of specific foods can vary widely, this number still provides a baseline around which we can create an estimated budget that would be suitable for a vast majority of people. But this one-size-fits-most method falls apart when you look at the 2 workers in my example. Now, I can't give totally accurate calorie counts for them because anthropomorphic rabbits and elephants unfortunately are still just figments of our imagination, but we can use real-life figures as a jumping-off point. Rabbits seem to require somewhere in the range of 300 calories per day, so while they're quite a bit smaller than a person, the disparity isn't as large as one might expect. Now on the other hoof, I'm going to give you a minute to guess how many calories you think an elephant eats in a day, because I guarantee you did not guess high enough. Did you say 70,000? If so, you cheated, but I forgive you. Regardless, that's a lot. I want to normalize this a bit because the elephants in Zootopia are probably a little smaller than scale and the rabbits a little larger. So for that reason, not to mention streamlining the math, let's say rabbits consume 500 calories per day compared to elephants' 50,000. That is still orders of magnitude different. Even if food isn't priced per calorie, it's fair to assume that food costs for elephants and other large mammals are exponentially higher than those for rabbits or foxes, not to mention the city's micro-residents. This same logic applies to every other resource, as larger citizens simply require more. Bigger living spaces to accommodate them means more land and building materials. Bigger clothes and tools and other goods, not just scaled up to match their size, but also sturdy enough to withstand their strength. Everything involved in this process comes at a cost. Now it's possible that, in this world, they've somehow miraculously figured out how to unify the cost of items so that size is not an issue. But to be quite honest, that opens the door for a different sort of exploitation, like, say, buying a jumbo pop made for one large resident, splitting it up, and selling it to dozens of smaller residents at a profit. All this to say that paying these two theoretical workers the same amount just isn't viable. A comfortable salary for Rabbit Cop would leave Elephant Cop destitute, while a comfortable salary for Elephant Cop would be exorbitant for Rabbit Cop. It's equal, technically, but it's not fair. So it seems as though the reasonable solution to this is to factor a worker's species size into their compensation. If your first response to this was to recoil a little bit, then I commend you for your empathy, because I felt similarly in the context of the real-world equality battles that surround us. But the key distinction here is species, because at this point, I'm not concerned with the specific individual needs of Rabbit Cop or Elephant Cop. Rather, I want to look at the data from the entirety of their respective populations to determine the needs of a typical adult. Then, based on those theoretical needs, we can establish a livable wage. Repeat this process for every single species, and what we'll ultimately end up with is a big matrix of animals and their respective recommended minimum wages. Now, I'm not an economist, so this next part may just be gibberish, but stick with me and we can see where it goes. Right off the bat, we know we're going to have a huge range here because obviously the recommended wage of a mouse is going to be a tiny fraction of that of a rhinoceros. But I want to establish a baseline against which all other figures can be compared, so I'm going to take all of these numbers and average them to create what I'll call 1x. This doesn't have to be an average, it could just be a random number from anywhere in the range, but either way, it's going to act as the comparison point for everything else in our list. In this example, the average of these salaries is $50,000, so that becomes our 1x figure. Now, we can see that lions are already at $50,000, so we're going to put a 1 in the multiplier column because their salary divided by our 1x amount is 1. Using this same logic, we can establish that the multiplier for elephants would be about 1.9, while for rabbits it would be about 0.1. This multiplier is our magic number when it comes to determining real-world compensation, because most jobs in Zootopia are not going to simply pay minimum wage. Instead, they'd establish a base 1x salary, then use the multiplier to scale it appropriately to the worker. Now at this point, you might be thinking that this is a system ripe for abuse, because what's to keep penny-pinching employers from hiring only the smallest workers? That's a great question, and also why this isn't the end of the video. In many cases, the answer is one of practicality, and that there are going to be roles that are best filled by animals of a particular size to the point where any initial cost savings would be more than negated by sheer inefficiency. Or, in the case of something like the ZPD, employing a wide range of species is advantageous not just for representation, but also to be prepared for a similarly wide range of criminals. But there's also a political aspect that would likely include incentives like tax credits or government subsidies to help neutralize these costs. The specifics are beyond me because I'm as much a politician as I am an economist. And it almost certainly also involves representatives from each species arguing a whole lot about the exact definition of fair. But as long as they're using their words and not going feral, that's a good sign. The ideal end result is that one species doesn't provide any inherent financial burden or benefit to prospective employers, which frees them up to base hiring decisions on more traditional factors, while also ensuring that every employee is fairly compensated. So that's it. We've figured out how to make sure every Zootopian gets their slice of the pie, gets their fair share, and now you have some fun new facts to share with all your friends at dinner parties once we're allowed to have dinner parties again. While you're at it, tell them to like and subscribe. And if you have a question you'd like me to sink my teeth into, leave a comment here or hit me up over on Twitter. Usually I think this is where I'd sign off, but I've never made it all the way through a video before, so I wasn't really prepared for that. Well, thanks for watching, stay safe, and have a great day.